Welcome back. In this module, we are going to be talking about locating elements in a dynamic web page. Here's what we'll cover in this module. First, we'll get introduced to elements and then go into a little bit more detail into what the course deals with, dynamic elements. There are several methods of locating these elements, and we'll have a theoretical overview of each of them next. This module has 3 demos. In the first, we'll get a practical introduction into locating elements in a web page. We'll continue with that in the second demo and go through all the methods discussed in the theory section. And in the final demo, we'll learn crucial tips on how to navigate a web page with Selenium and Python. First, let's talk about elements. What are elements? And why do you need to locate them? Elements are everything you see on a web page. Every field, link, image, text, and many things you don't see are all elements. It isn't really useful if you just manage to open web pages. You'll want to interact with and perform actions on these elements. And for that, you need to first locate the necessary element. We've learned what elements are. Now, let's look at dynamic elements. Dynamic elements are those elements whose ID, name, class, or CSS attributes are not fixed. They change whenever the page is reloaded. These changes are session or database driven. Modern day web applications built with JavaScript, jQuery, Ajax, etc. are chock full of dynamic elements. There are several different methods for finding elements on a page. Deciding which one to use depends on a lot of different factors, and there is no correct answer other than the one that works for you. In many cases, several different locators could all be used to accomplish the same task. There are 8 main methods in total. Let's have a look at these methods one by one. Locating elements by name. It is standard practice to define unique IDs for web elements in HTML code. However, there may be cases when these unique identifiers are not present. Instead, the names are there. So, locating elements by name is used when you know the name attribute of an element. Locating elements by ID. We use this method when the ID attribute for the element is available. It is in fact the most reliable and fastest way to locate a particular web element on an HTML page. An ID will always be unique for any object on a web page. So, we should prefer using ID attribute for locating the elements over other available options. Locating elements by link text. This method is used for selecting hyperlinks from a web page. Locating elements by partial link text. For locating the element by using the link text method, we need to provide the complete link text. However, the partial link text method enables us to select a hyperlink by giving only a part of the link text. Locating elements by CSS Selector. This method is used when you want to locate an element by CSS Selector syntax. A CSS selector is a combination of an element selector and a value which identifies the web element within a web page. They are string representations of HTML tags, attributes, ID, and class. Locating elements by tag name. As the title says, this method allows you to find a web element by specifying the tag name. Locating elements by class name. This method is used when you want to locate an element by class attribute name. Locating elements by Xpath. Let's take this one separately because there is more to explain here. Xpath is the language used for locating nodes in an XML document. Through XHTML, HTML can be an implementation of XML, and thus Selenium users can leverage this powerful language to target elements in their web applications. Xpath goes beyond as well as supports the simple methods of locating by ID or name attributes and opens up all sorts of new possibilities. One of the main reasons for using Xpath is when you don't have a suitable ID or name attribute for the element you wish to locate. You can use Xpath to either locate the element in absolute terms or relative to an element that does not have an ID or name attribute. Absolute Xpath determines the location of an object from the root. However, using this is not advised. Why? It's because even if we make a slight change in the web page code, absolute Xpath will change, and the WebDriver may not be able to locate the element with the old one. In case of relative Xpath, we try to locate a nearby element for which an ID or name attribute is given. Now, we can calculate Xpath of the target element relative to this nearby element. The chances of this Xpath changing is very less, thus making our test more robust. Xpath locators can also be used to specify elements via attributes other than ID and name. The basic format of Xpath is as given below. Let's break that down. The first part with the double / depicts the selection of the current node. The tag name part is how tag names such as input, div, etc. are selected. The at part signals the selection of the attribute. Attribute is the attribute name, and the value is the value of the attribute. All these ways to locate elements will be shown in more detail with code in the demo later on in the module. All these methods of locating elements can be performed using two techniques: find element and find elements. Find element command is used to uniquely identify a single web element within the web page, whereas find elements is used to uniquely identify the list of web elements within the web page. Let's look at the main differences between the two. Find element returns the first element if there are multiple web elements found with the same locator. Find elements returns a list of web elements. Find element throws exception no such element exception if there are no elements matching the locator strategy. Find elements returns an empty list if there are no web elements matching the locator strategy. In find elements, each web element is indexed starting from 0 like an array, which is obviously not applicable in find element since it returns a single element. In this demo, we are going to be looking at how to code out the different methods of locating elements on a web page, the theory of which was discussed earlier. We're back on the Jupyter notebook, and as usual, first we import all the necessary packages. Then, we add an option to Chrome to maximize the window size. I added it for convenience in making the course. You can choose to completely ignore it as it does not provide any functional differences. In case you do decide to go through, note that there are differences in how different operating systems and browsers treat certain arguments. As such, not all of the arguments work across the board. But this is fairly easy to get past with some Googling. Right. Without further ado, let's move on to the first method, locating elements by name. What we've done in this code block is to go to the Pluralsight website, locate the search bar, and type in my name and see what comes up. Let's go step by step. Here, we instantiate the Chrome driver. Remember, it is perfectly okay to go ahead without adding any options. This line provides the address of the website we intend to visit. Driver.get will navigate to that website. WebDriver will wait until the page is fully loaded before returning control to your test or script. And now, we have to find the element using the name. Let's see how to do that. Let's open up the Pluralsight website on another tab, right-click on the search bar, and click on Inspect. As you can see in the highlighted text, the name here is Q. Let's now go back to the notebook. The element can be located like this. Driver.findElementByName Q. I'm giving it a little bit of time in the middle. This again is perfectly okay for you to ignore since it is only there to record this better. Next, we'll be sending keys. This is similar to entering keys using your keyboard. But first, we'll make sure we clear any pre-populated input text in the search bar so it doesn't affect our search results. Here, we simulate pressing the return or enter key using the keys class. Let's execute that and see what happens. Brilliant! It does exactly what we want it to do. Navigates to the website, finds the search bar, types in my name, and presses enter. Finally, we use driver.quit to close the browser. In the next demo, we'll continue with the other methods of locating elements. As mentioned in the previous demo, here we'll look at the other methods of locating elements, but go through them a little quicker. The next method is to locate an element using the ID. Here, we'll navigate to the official site of Python, locate the search bar, and type in lists. How do we find the ID of the field? We'll be following similar steps to what we did previously. We'll open a tab and go to the website. Go to the search bar and click on Inspect. As you can see in the highlighted text, ID is ID search field, which is what we'll type in here. We follow similar steps to the previous demo to type in lists and press return. There you go. The next method is locate element by link text. What we want to do in this code block, in addition to searching my name on Pluralsight, is to click on my course link, which will take you to its main page. Let's see how to do that. We'll locate the element by name and follow the same procedures to search for my name as before. Then, we use the find element by link text method and type in the exact link name, which in this case is the course name. Remember, with this method, the name has to be exactly the same word for word, otherwise it'll throw up a no such element error. This line will click on the link in question and take you to the main page of the course. Let's execute the block and see. The next method is locating elements by partial link text. It is exactly similar to the previous method, except for the fact that instead of typing in the entire link text here, you can type it in partially. I won't be running this as you've already seen what will happen. The next method is locating elements by CSS Selector. Here again, we'll be going into Pluralsight, locating the search bar and typing in my name, except for the fact that we'll be locating the field using CSS Selector. Let's inspect the field again. Here you can see the CSS class is header search input. To access the CSS class, we use the dot symbol. So it'll be find element by CSS selector input.header search input. Let's run this and see. And there you go. Finally, we'll have a look at locating elements by Xpath. We'll try to do what we've done multiple times before. If you've looked at the theory section, you remember this part as being exactly how the basic format of the Xpath was defined. If you inspect the element, you can see that the search field is in the input node, and then you select the name attribute and give the value as Q. If you run that, you'll again reach the by now familiar result. We still have two methods remaining, locating elements by tag name and class name. This would be an excellent opportunity to give it a go yourself on these, since you should now be familiar with the basics. If you run into any issues, or if you have any question, please don't hesitate to ask in the discussion section below. We've seen how to locate an element and how to enter text into a field that supports it. But there are other challenges to navigating a web page, such as forms, the drop-down menus and its ilk, which is what we're going to tackle in this demo. We're back inside the Jupyter notebook, and first, we learn to deal with forms and drop-down menus. For that, let's try to fill out the signing up form in the Pluralsight website. Let's first navigate to that page and see what we are up against. We'll open up the Pluralsight website and click on Get Started. We'll scroll down a bit and click on the Get Started button again under the monthly pricing scheme. And this is the form we'll try to fill out. You can see it has a drop-down box under the country of residence category. If you noticed, there is a loading screen that appears when we first navigated to this page. We'll have to address that as well. Let's right-click on the first name field and click on Inspect. You can see that this can be located using the name, so can each of the other fields. Let's get to coding then. First, as usual, we'll import the required packages. Then, we add the option for Chrome to be displayed in full screen. We instantiate the Chrome driver. Then, we navigate to the relevant web page. Here, we copy-paste the address of the sign-up page. You're also welcome to try and navigate to the page using Selenium only. After the previous demo, it shouldn't be that hard. Then, we add a WebDriver wait. This is where we take care of the loading screen. This implements a wait of 10 seconds, within which, if the element becomes clickable, then we proceed to the rest of the procedures. This is important, as not doing this will result in error messages which point to the element not being detected. Now, we locate each of the text fields by name, clear the field, use send keys to fill in the appropriate values. We'll use an imaginary name and email ID. And when we run this code block, you can see exactly what happens. Now, let's see how we tackle the country of residence drop-down menu. We'll assume our imaginary user is from the United States. If you inspect the drop-down element, then we can see we have short forms of all the countries attached with the option tag. That's what we'll target. First, we'll locate the drop-down menu element using Xpath. Then, we use locate elements by tag method to locate the option tags. Here, do note that we use find elements, not element, but elements. This will mean that all option tags will be returned as a list. Then, we use a for loop to locate the option tag which points to US, and then click on that. After that, we locate the checkbox using Xpath and then click on that. We do the same thing with the submit button. Running this code block should help us successfully complete this form. Now, let's go through other methods of navigating a web page. I won't be getting into the details of it, but will be giving you a quick overview. Handling iframes. What is an iframe? Iframe or inline frame is an HTML document embedded inside another HTML document on a website. The iframe HTML element is often used to insert content from another source, such as advertisement, videos, etc. into a web page. Learning to switch between multiple iframes inside a web page is needed to access elements inside the iframe. There are many methods to switch to your desired iframe. One of them is by frame name as shown here. This line shows you how to switch back to the parent frame. And finally, this is how you handle those annoying or in some cases useful pop-ups. This line will help you access the pop-up and will return the currently open pop-up object. With this object, you can now accept, dismiss, or read its contents. This interface works equally well on alerts, confirms, and prompts. In this module, we went through what elements are and the different methods of locating them, namely by ID, by name, by link text, by partial link text, by CSS selector, by tag name, by class name, and finally by Xpath. We also delved a little more into what Xpath is. Then, we had a couple of demos which were all about the practical implementation of all these methods. We also had a demo that dealt with how to navigate a web page that included how to deal with forms, drop-down menus, iframes, and pop-ups.